Please stop now. So we are continuing with our Ricardian model, right? So yes, in the last class I have introduced the model. So here, just last part. So if you have any query from the Ricardian model, you can ask now. Do you have any problem with the Ricardian model till now? Any problem? Any problem with the Ricardian model?
No, ma'am.
Yes. So that was the last slide which I discussed in the last class. So here, so what we have seen, actually I said in the last class, but again, as it is the continuation, I have to discuss it. So what was the end point of the last class? That if PC by PW is greater than ALC by ALW, then the country should produce. Where is my? I'm not getting. I cannot move. Just a minute. What happened? Why it's stuck? Wait for a minute. Yes. So here is my slide. So here what we assume that there are two countries. One is home, another is foreign, and both can produce cheese and wine. And একটু দাঁড়াও তো আর ভালো লাগে না হ্যালো হ্যাঁ আমি করেছিলাম কিন্তু তারপরে ওই আরেকজনের সাথে কথা হয়ে গেছে আমাদের মেশিনটা খারাপ হয়ে গেছে আমি একটা ডকেট বুক করেছি তো আপনি কি আসবেন ওটা সারাতে এটা হচ্ছে পূর্বাহ্ন 54 একদম okay. So this is the thing where okay, why I stop. There are two countries. One is home, another is foreign. Both countries are producing cheese and wine, and they can produce it with the help of labor. Okay, so a factor of production was only the labor. Now PC by PW, it is the relative price of cheese if it is greater than ALC by ALW. And what is A? ALC means the unit labor requirement for the cheese production. That means the number of labor required to produce cheese, 1 unit of cheese. Similarly, ALW is the number of labor used to produce 1 unit of wine. Okay, so if this ratio is greater, then all the workforce, they are interested to produce only cheese, and the country ultimately will produce only cheese. Okay, so that was my conclusion. Now what is PC by PW? Again it's stuck. বুঝতেই পারছি না কি হচ্ছে। And surprisingly, when I stop the sharing, then I can move. But when I'm going to share it, it's stuck. Now look here. What is PC by PW? PC by PW is the relative price of cheese in terms of wine, right? So it is nothing but the relative price. So কি বলবো in general I can say okay, it's the price. Okay, it's the price of cheese. And what is ALC by ALW? Look, if I sacrifice 1 unit of C, then ALC ALC unit of labor is released, right? Now ALW unit of labor is needed to produce 1 unit of W. Actually, that I did in my last class by writing in this white page, right? With that red pen. But anyway, here it is written neatly. And now ALW unit of labor is required to
Honey, did
produce.
you
Yes.
stop sharing?
One more. Just a minute. Just a minute. Now can you see?
Yes, ma'am. Now I can see.
Okay, okay,
Yes,
fine,
ma'am.
fine. Okay, fine. So what I said, that what is PC by PW? How can you interpret that relation? That okay, that PC, if PC by PW is greater than ALC by ALW, the country will produce only C. So economically, how can you explain it? Why it is so? So here it is. PC by PW is the relative price of cheese in terms of W, that is in terms of wine. Now, so your left hand side is PC by PW, this one. Eh, Baba, what to do? There is no electricity right now, but my battery is running low. So many problems are there. Anyway, let me continue. Say there is 1 unit of look here. PC by PW is the relative price of cheese. Just a minute. Give me 1 minute. Huh? Uh, Electricity is there. So yeah. Okay, fine. So now look, I think now everything will be all right. So PC by PW is greater than ALC by ALW. So what is PC by PW? Here we are again the problem. Where is the problem? Why I cannot move to the next slide? Okay. Now look. PC by PW is the relative price of cheese. So my left hand side of this last line, it is the relative price of cheese. In general, I can say, okay, it is the price of cheese. Fine. So it is the price. My left hand side is the price. Now what about my right hand side? The right hand side, look, if I sacrifice 1 unit of C, then ALC units of labor is released. That we know because this is by definition, right? ALC is the number of labor which is required to produce 1 unit of cheese. So ALC amount of labor will be released if I sacrifice 1 unit of C production. Huh? Now, ALW unit of labor is required to produce 1 unit of W. That is also known to us by definition. So, I need ALW unit of labor to produce 1 unit of W. Okay, so I have ALC unit of labor from here. So, this amount of labor can produce how much W? So it is nothing but ALC by ALW. This is simple unitary method. Ah, so what is the conclusion? If I sacrifice 1 unit of C, then ALC by ALW amount of W will come. Right? If I sacrifice 1 unit of C, then I will get ALC by ALW amount of W. Right? Do you agree with me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, if I say it from the other way, that if I sacrifice ALC ALW amount of W, then I will get 1 unit of C. So, to have 1 unit of C, I have to sacrifice ALC ALW amount of W. Okay, just opposite. So to have 1 unit of C, I have to sacrifice ALC by ALW amount of W. So this is the opportunity cost of C. if I want to get 1 unit of C, then I have to sacrifice this amount of W. So this amount of W is the opportunity cost of C. Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So ALC by ALW is what? It is the opportunity cost of C in terms of W. Okay. ALC by ALW is the opportunity cost of C in terms of W. So this is what written in the last bullet. ALC by ALW is the amount of W and it is the opportunity cost of C. Okay. ALC by ALW amount of W is the opportunity cost of C. So I'm going back to my previous one. So the right hand side is ALC by ALW. So you can understand now ALC by ALW is nothing but the opportunity cost of C in terms of W. So I can say, okay, the right hand side is the cost. Opportunity cost is a type of cost. So I can say right hand side is the cost. And what was my left hand side? It is the price. So price of cheese is greater than cost of cheese. Okay, price of cheese is greater than cost of cheese. Then what should be done by the country? The country should produce it because it is giving him revenue. Now, price is greater than cost. Simple. If price is greater than cost, then you should produce it because it is giving you more revenue, and that is what done by the home country here. Okay, so PC by PW is nothing but the relative price of cheese, and ALC by ALW is nothing but the opportunity cost of cheese. So as relative price of cheese is greater than the opportunity cost of cheese, then the country will produce it naturally. Price is greater than cost, so you should produce it. Okay, so this is the pattern of or this is the idea of the trade specialization of the home country. Okay, so up to this part I have done. Now let me go to the next one, that is the trade. So this is just the background of the yes, this is just the background of the Ricardian model. Now I am coming to the trade. If there is trade, then what will happen? Hmm. Now look. Why? Why my cursor is not working? I can understand. Now look here. So many things are written. Let me explain one by one. Concentrate on the home country. We will only concentrate on the home country, as I said in my last class. For the explanation part and for the comparison part, we will obviously introduce foreign. So foreign is represented by the asterisk sign. Okay, so everything is similar with the home country other than this asterisk sign. Okay, now home is more productive. We are assuming, look, say, that means we are assuming home is more productive in the production of cheese and less productive in W. Okay, so this is our assumption. Home is more productive for cheese production. Hmm. Now, how can you measure the productivity? Productivity is generally measured by the average product of labor and marginal product of labor, right? So, this is also applicable here. Productivity is measured by APL and MPL. Hmm. And YL because it is the only factor of production in the Ricardian model. Okay, now we assume one thing, that unit labor requirement is fixed. Okay, that was our assumption, that unit labor requirement is fixed. And as it is fixed, then APL and MPL both are same. Okay, unit labor requirement means the number of labor required to produce 1 unit of the output. Okay, this is by definition, this is APL, right? But MPL is what? MPL is a change of, if you change your output by 1 unit, then how much your labor will change. And this is nothing but this unit labor requirement. No? And it is assumed as constant. That ALC is assumed as constant. So what is your APL? Is your MPL. Hmm? So APL and MPL for C production is ALC. Similarly, APL and MPL of wine production is ALW. Okay, so they are same. So it is written here. APL and MPL is 1 by, it is inverse. So it is 1 by ALC for cheese and 1 by ALW for wine. Okay. Now, as labor is more productive in for C production in the home country, so I can say, now this is very important. Look at this bullet. ALC by ALW is less than ALC star by ALW star. Try to understand this inequality very carefully. ALC by ALW. What is ALC? The number of labor required to produce C in the home country, divided by ALW, that is number of labor required to produce wine in the home country. Okay, so this is less than that of the foreign country. Why? Because labor, it is assumed that labor is more productive for cheese production in the home country, right? So that means to produce 1 unit of cheese, you need relatively lesser labor in the home country. I'm telling you again. As we assume labor is more productive for cheese in the home country, so we need relatively lesser labor to produce 1 unit of cheese in home country. Do you agree with me? We
Yes, ma'am.
need
Ma'am,
lesser labor. Yes.
ma'am, what do we call this ratio of ALC by ALW?
Yes, this is relatively. This is because of relative. I'm saying relatively.
No, ma'am, what do we call this ratio? Does it have a name? Like,
Oh, yes, yes. That is what I discussed just now. This is nothing but the opportunity cost of cheese production. ALC by ALW, this is the opportunity cost of cheese in terms of W. I discussed
okay,
right
ma'am.
now.
Okay, ma'am.
Hmm. So I'm just trying to interpret this inequality, not in terms of opportunity cost. Okay, just in whatever written here, I'm just trying to explain in terms of that. ALC is the number of labor required to produce cheese by ALW, and that is less in home as compared to foreign. Why? Because labor is assumed as more productive to produce cheese in the home country. So you need lesser labor to produce 1 unit of cheese in the home country as compared to the foreign, and it is in relative sense. Okay. Up to this point, is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Now look at the next bullet. If ALC by ALW is less than ALC star by ALW star, so that can be represented by PC by PW is less than PC star by PW star. So where is the relation between these two? I will explain. But just look, before going to that technical relationship between ALC by ALW and PC by PW, actually we have a sort of relationship. We have discussed already what is the relationship, but how you can derive PC by PW from ALC by ALW, that I will discuss. But before going to that slide, try to understand that if you are more productive, so here we are assuming home country is more productive to produce cheese, so he is producing a lot of cheese, right? The labor is more productive here to produce cheese, so the home country is producing a lot of cheese, and as there is a plenty of supply, the price is relatively less, right? And this is what written here. The relative price of cheese in the home country is less than that of the foreign country. So cheese is relatively dearer in the foreign country, and cheese is relatively cheaper in the home country. Why? Because the labor of the home country, they are more productive to produce cheese. So they are producing a lot of cheese within a certain time. So there is a lot of supply of cheese, so price is lesser. Hmm? So is that bullet okay? That bullet, that second last bullet.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now we know what is the slope of the ppf, that we know already. The slope is nothing but the ALC by ALW, we derived in the last class. So as ALC by ALW is less than ALC star by ALW star, so we can say that as ppf is downward sloping na, so ALC by ALW star, this is greater, so that means foreign countries ppf is steeper, its slope is negatively sloped is lesser, and this is flatter. So home countries ppf is flatter and foreign countries ppf is steeper. Okay, so from these three bullets are most important in this slide, so you have to understand each and every bullet here is first, second and third. If it is clear, then I will go to the next slide to show how you can get PC by PW from ALC by ALW.
Ma'am,
If,
can you repeat the third bullet
yes,
and
I
PPF?
say that look, we in the last class we discussed that the slope of PPF is nothing but minus of ALC by ALW. We derived it. Can you
Yes,
remember
ma'am.
that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So that is why I said as we assume ALC by ALW is less than ALC star by ALW star, the foreign countries PPF is steeper. The absolute value is more, na? The absolute value is more, so PPF is steeper for foreign as compared to home. So home
Okay, ma'am.
PPF,
That got it. Yes, ma'am. Got it.
so home PPF is flatter and the foreign PPF is steeper, relatively steeper. Okay. So these 3 points are very important because our total Ricardian theory discussion is based on these 3 bullets. Hmm. So now I am going to the next slide just to show the technical relation between these two. Look, as labor is more productive in, look, this is our assumption. Remember, this is based on our assumption. We assume that labor is more productive. Huh? So labor is more productive for cheese in the home country. So we can say 1 by, look, 1 by ALC, this is what? MPL, right? 1 by ALC is divided by 1 by ALW, that is MPL for C production divided by MPL for W production in the home country. And that will be definitely higher than that of the foreign country because labor is assumed as more productive and we are measuring productivity in terms of MPL. If it is more productive, so MPL is higher and MPL is measured by 1 by ALC. So relatively MPL in the home country for cheese is greater than that of foreign. So second bullet is okay or not? Take your time, think and then tell me.
Yes, ma'am. Understood.
Anyone else? If you have anyone in the class, if you have any problem, feel free and ask. Because look, you cannot just read it out and vomit in your exam copy. You have to understand it. Any doubt anywhere? Because so many so many notations are used, star, ALWLC, so many things are happening in the slides. So if you have any query anywhere, you may have, it's quite possible. Ask, just ask, don't hesitate. Okay, so if I just assume there is no other query. If you have any query, just stop me and ask. That you can do in the class anytime. So I am just trying to simplify this inequality. So I'm just rearranging it, and it is coming like ALW by ALC. That the left hand side is coming as ALW by ALC, and as it is, the sign is greater, so it's greater than ALW star by ALC star. So if I make it inverse, then the sign will change. So the sign is ALC by ALW is less than ALC star by ALW star. Okay, and that is equal to PC by PW is less than PC by PW, PC star by PW star. Now look, I'm coming to the last one, this slide, this bullet, but before that, up to this point I think it is okay. So look here, we assume that labor is more productive in country C for producing C in the home country, and that is why logically I explained why this inequality holds, right? We assume that labor is more productive to produce cheese in the home country, and then not logically, economically I'm trying to explain that why ALC by ALW is less than ALC star by ALW star is true, that I explained. But here the same thing I did mathematically. Okay, the same thing I did mathematically with the help of the MPL concept, right? Now look, why that was our question actually, that why ALC by ALW is replaced by PC by PW. What is the relation? The relation is, what is PC by PW? It is the slope of your price line, right? It is the slope of your price line. If you try to if you try to remember, if you try to draw your PPF, then when you are drawing like this, just give me 1 minute. Yes, this is what we are doing now. This is the axis. In general, our PPF is like that. It is not that in case of Ricardo, remember, it is a general PPF. The slope of the PPF is dy by dx. And when we are trying to find out the slope of the price line is like this. It is tangent. So what is the slope? It is py by px. So here it is, right? Now look, in case of Ricardo, our PPC is like this. Our PPC is like this, right? Because it is straight line. The slope is ALC by ALW. So it's a straight line PPC. And before trade, remember, before trade, what you are producing, you have to consume it. Before trade, what you are producing, you have to consume it, because you don't have the scope to exchange of your surplus or your deficit. You cannot do anything. So that is why before trade, in okay, one more thing, in international economics, that before trade is called autarky, auterky. Okay, autarky, auterky. I will write it, I think in a in some slide you will get that term, but anyway, right now as I need it, I'm explaining. Without trade or before trade situation is called autarky. Auterky. Okay. So in the autarky situation, what you are producing, you have to consume it. So that means this is your PPC and this is your price line. Right? Do you agree with me? Before trade at autarky, this is your PPC and that should be your price line.
Yes,
Because
ma'am.
because you are consuming, and rather you are producing where your price line is tangent with your PPC. And as your PPC is a straight line and it is the autarky situation, so whatever you will produce, you have to consume it. So I can say this is my PPC and this is my price line before trade. Okay, so the slope of the price line in case of our example is PC by PW, and the slope of the absolute slope of the PPC is ALC by ALW. So that is why I am saying that I can easily replace ALC by ALW by PC by PW. Now tell me, is it okay that why I am replacing PC by PW in this bullet for ALC by ALW?
Ma'am, can you repeat the last part?
Yes. What I said, that in the autarky, we know as there is no scope of exchange, whatever I will produce, I have to consume it. Okay, and what is the production point on the PPC? Where my PPC is tangent with the price line, like this. This is my, that should be my production point. And in Ricardo, the PPC is a straight line, is a like this downward sloping straight line. And I know whatever I will produce, I have to consume it. Right? So that is why in the autarky, PPC, the slope of the PPC is equal to the slope of the budget line. That means this is my PPC and this is my price line. This is my PPC and this is one is imposed on another. Okay, one is imposed on another. The price line is imposed on PPC. So I can produce here, I can produce here, I can produce here in my autarky, but whatever I will produce, I have to consume it. Okay, so as one is imposed on another, that is why I can replace ALC by ALW with PC by PW. Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Any query from anyone else?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so I have done my autarky explanation. I have done my autarky explanation. I assume that in the home country, labor is more productive for C, and so that is why the relative price of cheese in the home country is less than the relative price of cheese in the foreign country. This is the condition before trade. Remember, this is the condition before trade. We don't know what will happen after trade. Hmm. This is the condition before trade. Again, here I am not saying ki home country will produce only, home country is producing only cheese. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying this is the situation before trade. Okay, now what will be in trade? For that we need to derive the relative supply curve. Don't confuse with all those bullets. I will explain one by one bullet. Relative supply curve. To derive the trade pattern, to find out the trade pattern, we need relative supply curve. This is partially new for us. Hmm. We know what is supply curve. In that sense, some concept is there in our mind that what is supply curve. Supply curve is upward rising. Price is measured on the vertical axis. Quantity sold is measured on the horizontal axis. That part we know. But here we are trying to find out the relative supply curve. Why relative? Relative means it is the supply of cheese in terms of wine. Okay, so the ratio will be there. Hmm. The production of cheese divided by production of wine. This is first thing. That is why it is a relative supply curve. And another feature of the relative supply curve is that we are going to add the total supply of cheese by home and foreign and total supply of wine of home and foreign. So the relative supply curve for the world as a whole. Okay. We are going to derive the relative supply curve for the world as a whole. It is not the relative supply curve of foreign of or the home only. It is the relative supply curve which is shown to the world. Okay, so it will represent the world. The relative supply curve will represent the relative supply of cheese in terms of wine of the world. Fine. Now I am going to one first point. If it's very easy, huh? Just look at the first bullet. If PC by PW, what is PC by PW? It is the relative price of cheese. Now all dogs are barking. Oof, এত বিরক্তিকর না? If PC by PW is less than, just forget about this part. Forget about this part. Just forget about the foreign. Just concentrate here. If I can just just close that part with my hand, then it will be easy. Look, if PC by PW is less than ALC by ALW, then what will be produced by the home country? If PC by PW is less than ALC by ALW, then what should be produced by the home country? PC by PW is the relative price of cheese. ALC by ALW is the opportunity cost of cheese in the home country? Tell me. I am asking you the question. If
Why?
PC by PW, yes. If PC by PW is less than ALC by ALW, then home should produce wine. Why? Because look, it is the relative price. Relative price of cheese is less than opportunity cost. So your cost is more. For the cheese production, your cost is more than your return on your relative price. You should not produce it. My cost is more than my return. Why should I produce it? So I will not produce. So home will not produce cheese. Home will not produce a single unit of cheese. And if you just make it inverse, that means PW by PC, then it will be greater than ALW by ALC. So that means relative price of wine is greater than opportunity cost of wine. So price is greater than cost. You should produce wine. So what will be the decision of the home for the first bullet? I should produce only wine. I will not produce a single unit of cheese. So this is called complete specialization. Okay. This is called complete specialization of the home in favor of wine. That means home country is producing only wine. Do you get my point? Any problem?
No,
No,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay. Now I am going to my foreign country. The same thing is happening for the foreign as well. Look, for the foreign also, PC by PW is less than ALC star by ALW star. So this is also a rational country. He is also thinking just like the home country. He is also thinking that okay, the cost is more than the price, then I should not produce cheese. So what is the ultimate result? The ultimate result is both countries are not producing cheese and both countries are producing wine. So there is no cloth production. Sorry, there is no cheese production. Okay, there is no cheese production in the world. Every country is producing only wine. Hmm. So the wine is produced by both the countries. Cheese production is zero and wine production is maximum because both the countries have utilized all its resources to produce wine. So this is the maximum wine. The first bullet, if the first bullet is true, if the first bullet is true, then you will get the maximum wine produced by the world. Hmm. Now I am going to the next slide, otherwise I cannot explain the shape. Look here. Okay. This is another thing I have to explain. In the horizontal axis, as I said, it is measured the relative supply. Okay, it's the relative supply. So in the horizontal axis, we are measuring the supply of cheese with respect to wine. Look what I am measuring on the horizontal axis. QC, that is quantity of cheese produced by the home country, plus QC star, that means the quantity of cheese produced by the foreign country. Okay, so the numerator here is the total amount of cheese produced by the world, hmm, divided by the total amount of wine produced by the world. So that is why it is called relative supply. Okay, C by W. So relative supply. And as we are measuring C by W on the horizontal axis, so on the vertical axis, it is PC by PW, relative price of cheese. Okay. Now, as I said, my first bullet is saying that both countries are going to produce only wine and no country will produce a single unit of cheese. So, cheese output will be zero. That means here QC is zero, QC star is also zero. Okay, so 0 by something is 0. So we are on the vertical axis. Okay, we are on the vertical axis for this inequality. For this particular inequality, we are on the vertical axis because there is no cheese production, right? So if it is, then what is the maximum amount of wine they can produce? That is the question. Na? What is the maximum amount of wine the world can produce? First of all, if uh, where it is. Yes. So the if total labor is used by the home country to produce the wine, then the amount of wine should be L bar by ALW. For that, I need the last just a minute. I need my this slide, otherwise I cannot explain. That was a mistake done by me. It should be in a single slide. Look here. Look here. This is the labor constraint. So if the home country has used all its labor force to produce wine, then QC will be 0. And if QC is 0, then QW will be L bar by ALW. Similarly, for the foreign country, QW star, that will be L bar star by AIW star. So that is the maximum amount of wine that can be produced by the world as a whole. And if that first inequality is true, then we will get this amount of wine. Okay. So tell me, first inequality explanation is okay for you or not? Is it okay for you?
Yes, ma'am.
So now we are on the vertical axis. We are very happy. We are on the vertical axis. No complication is there. We are on the vertical axis. Simple. We are on the vertical axis. We are producing only wine. There is no one to produce cheese. So we are very happy. There is no trade. If there is no cheese production, then how can you trade? There is nothing to exchange. Everyone is with their wine. So no cheese and no trade as well. Now I am going to the second bullet. Look. Again, initially forget about the foreign country. Look at this. If PC by PW is equal to ALC by ALW, tell me what will be the decision of the home country? This is my question to you. If PC by PW is equal to ALC by ALW, then what should be the decision of the home country?
Ma'am, home country will produce both.
Yes. Home country will produce both. Very good. Home country will produce both because he is indifferent. Because he is indifferent. Relative price of cheese is equal to the opportunity cost. And it's true for the wine. So he is indifferent and he will produce both. It is just like the autarky for the home. It is just like the autarky, and based on this, we just replace. Look here. Based on that, we replaced ALC by LW by PC by PW, and I explained why it is so. And this is what happened here, right? So home country will produce both. But what about the foreign? Foreign will do what? Try. Make a try.
Ma'am, foreign will produce wine.
Exactly. Foreign will produce wine. So foreign is going for complete specialization like before. But home, who had complete specialization, is now going for incomplete specialization. Okay. Now the foreign is producing wine, and for the first bullet also foreign was producing wine. So for both the bullets, foreign is going for the complete specialization for wine. But initially, home was for the complete specialization in favor of wine, but now home is moving from there and home is going for incomplete specialization. That means he is going to produce both. Okay, so this is about the complete and incomplete specialization. Now, if it is, now world is producing some amount of cheese. Initially, world was not producing a single unit of cheese, but now world is going to produce some amount of cheese, and it is produced by home. Okay, not with its full workforce, but okay, home is producing with a part of its labor force. He is engaging a part of its labor force to produce some amount of cheese. So in the world, there is some supply of cheese. Now look, when it will happen, up to this inequality, or rather, before this equality, there is complete specialization for both. When we are getting this equality, from there we are getting some amount of QC. Okay, from there we are getting some amount of QC, but before that there was no QC, and QC star is still not there. Okay, so from where we will start our relative supply curve? It will from ALC by ALW. Okay, from ALC by ALW. Before this equality, there was no cheese production. From this equality, there is cheese production. And that is why our relative supply curve will start from this point. So where PC by PW is equal to ALC by ALW, that is here, we are getting our relative. This is just the starting point of our relative supply curve. Okay. Is it okay? That second bullet? Any problem for the second bullet?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am,
Now,
the difference part, can you explain again?
which one?
How that equality part, PC by
Okay.
PW is equal to, in that diagram, ma'am.
Yes, yes. ALC by ALW is equal to PC by PW. It is here. Okay. And it is here. And if this equality holds, then home country is going to produce some amount of cheese. So QC, here look, QC is positive now. QW is also positive now. QC star is 0 and QW star is very much prominent because foreign country is producing only one. So these are the explanation of this component. QC is positive, QC star is 0, QW is positive, QW star is also positive. Okay, so this brown line, which is vertical, which is parallel to the horizontal axis, this line is showing the combination of QC and QW which is produced by the home country. Okay, this
So,
is
ma'am, in this, in that question, we are not showing the foreign country part.
no. Foreign is not producing cheese. Foreign is producing, this is the relative supply of cheese in terms of foreign. RS is the relative supply of cheese in terms of foreign. So
Okay.
from after, look at this ALC by ALW, we are getting a little bit of QC from the home. Home is producing C. So that is why we are getting, when it is, if it is PC is equal to PW, and that is why we are getting this horizontal line. This horizontal line is showing how much QC we can get. Look, we can move. It depends on the home country's decision that how much QC he will produce. But whatever cheese he will produce, he can change the cheese amount. Na? And that is why my line is also moving. The line is showing for different amount of PC, for a certain amount or rather a fixed amount of PC by PW, I can get this amount of CQ, I can get this amount of QC, I can get this amount of QC. Okay. And the maximum amount of QC that can be produced by the home is L by ALC. This is the maximum. That is why it's the boundary. From 0 to L by ALC, that much of C can be produced by the home. So for this stretch, the relative supply curve is parallel to the horizontal axis.
Okay, ma'am.
So this is a range actually. For if PC by PW is equal to ALC by ALW, this is the range of QC by QW we can get. QW is constant. Sorry, QW star is constant. QW varies and QC varies. Okay, and that is why we are getting this stretch. Because of their variability, we are getting this stretch, but it is parallel to the horizontal axis. Why? Because our PC by PW is constant and it is equal to ALC by LW. That is why the line is horizontal. Okay, take your own time and think, indulge. Don't worry and don't hurry as well. Take your one time. I'm waiting for you. I expect all of you should understand why the shape is like this. It the same thing is in your book, but that verbal explanation is not there. That is why I'm trying to explain it to you. Take your own time. Try to understand. Is it okay? PC by PW is equal to ALC by ALW. Okay? PC by PW is equal to ALC by ALW. If this equality holds, then we will get different option of QC by KW because home is indifferent between C and W. But QW star is constant. But as QC can vary, as QW can vary, so we will get a range. Okay, we will get a range of supply of QC in terms of W. So what is that range? The range is parallel to that horizontal axis. Why it is not upward rising? Because I am not going to change PC by PW. It is same. It is constant at ALC by ALW. But given ALC by ALW, we may have this much of QC by QW, we may have this much of C by W, we may have this much of C by W. It is absolutely the decision of the home country. The reason behind this stretch is the decision of the home country. And what is the maximum amount of C they can produce? Look, at this point, home is producing maximum amount of wine. When we are moving along this line, the home is producing more and more amount of cheese and lesser amount of wine. So what is the maximum amount of cheese he can produce? If he employ all its labor force for the cheese, then it will be. So what is the maximum amount of cheese in that case? L bar by ALC. Okay, so it is here. Up to this point, we are getting the line parallel to the horizontal axis. This is our relative supply curve. Any query?
Yes, ma'am, it's understood.
Okay. So I'm going to the third bullet. No one is asking any other questions, so I'm just assuming everything is okay for them. But still, if you have any query, please ask me. Now look at the third bullet. If ALC, now this is another. Actually, what happened, look, PC by PW is rising continuously. So now ALC by ALW is less than PC by PW is less than ALC star by ALW star. Now again, initially forget about the foreign, just concentrate for the home. ALC by ALW is less than PC by PW. So opportunity cost of cheese is less than relative price of cheese for home. Then what should be the decision of the home?
Ma'am, it will produce cheese.
Exactly. Very simple. Relative price of cheese is more, so I should produce cheese only. So here, the home is going for complete specialization in favor of cheese. He will produce only cheese. Simple. So he will engage all its labor force to produce cheese. And we know what is the maximum amount of cheese he can produce in that case? L bar by ALC. So that is the cheese which will come from home country. What about the foreign? Look at this and tell me what will be for foreign. What will be the decision of the foreign country?
And it will still produce wine.
Yes. Yes. The foreign country is still going for wine only. So here we are getting complete specialization by both the countries for different commodities. Okay. Here the home will produce only cheese and the foreign will produce only wine. Okay, so again, if it is a fixed point, remember it's a fixed amount of relative supply will be there, because the home is employing all its labor force for cheese production, and for that case the amount of cheese which will be produced by the home will be L bar by LC. And if the foreign will employ all its labor force to produce wine, then the maximum amount of wine that can be produced by the foreign, that will be L bar star by ALW star. Okay, so the relative supply, look at this point. L by ALC divided by L star by ALW star. Okay, so this is for complete specialization by both the countries. And this is when PC by PW is, look at this again, PC by PW is greater than ALC by ALW. That means PC by PW is greater than this point, and PC by PW is less than ALC by AL star. That means this value. Okay. So if PC by PW is within this range, if PC by PW is within this range, then home will produce only cheese and foreign will produce only wine. Okay. And it will be a constant ratio. So that is why we are getting this vertical stretch for this particular range of PC by PW. That vertical stretch is clear for you or not?
Yes.
Okay, so that vertical stretch is there. Now I am going to the next bullet. Here again PC by PW is much higher, so ALC by ALW is less than PC by PW is equal to ALC star by ALW star. Now tell me what will happen by the home and by the foreign.
Home will produce cheese and foreign will produce both.
Exactly. So home is going for complete specialization in favor of cheese, and this is the point where we are getting incomplete specialization by foreign. This is the first part where we are getting incomplete specialization by the foreign. Foreign can produce both, but home will produce only cheese. Look at PC by PW is equal to ALC by ALW star. Here PC by PW is equal to LC by LSW star. That happens. So it is here. And with the same logic, here the home is stick at its cheese production. He will not change from there. But QC star and QW star, that can vary, because here foreign is going for incomplete specialization. So it's a range. Just like this, just like before, it's a range. So again it is parallel to the horizontal axis, and this movement along this horizontal stretch is because of foreign now. So we are getting this vertical, or rather horizontal stretch for PC by PW is equal to ALC by ALW star. Okay, the last one. What will happen if the last inequality is true?
Both the countries will produce cheese.
Yes, both countries will produce cheese. Just opposite to the first bullet. Hmm. Both countries will produce cheese because relative price of cheese is higher for both of them as compared to their opportunity cost of cheese. Okay, so cost is less for both, so they will produce only cheese. So again, it will be a complete specialization, and there will be no, remember here, there will be no wine production. No one will produce wine. So here, if I want to draw this line, look, QW is 0, QW star is 0. Something by 0 is infinite. Okay, so that is why you cannot draw, actually it's an infinitely sloped, so the relative supply curve will be infinite in that sense. Huh? So we have done our relative supply curve. So what is the shape of the relative supply curve? It's a step diagram, right? This, just like a step. Hmm. So the relative supply curve is a step diagram sort of thing. And when there was no cheese production or when there was no wine production, there will be no trade. So in that case, in this section, there will be no trade because no one is there to produce to sell cheese. Similarly, there will be no trade for this stretch as well as there will be no one to produce or sell wine. Okay. So these two stretches cancelled out for trade. But you can trade here, you can trade here, you can trade here as well. Hmm. Now look, my relative demand curve, there is no difficulty to draw the relative demand curve. It's simple. The demand for cheese divided by demand for wine. There is no such speciality for deriving the relative demand here. So it's a smooth relative demand curve. Now look, my relative demand curve is going through that vertical stretch. That green one is going through vertical stretch. Why not here? Why not here? Can you tell me why they are not here? Why it is not here? Why relative demand curve is not intersecting relative supply curve at its horizontal stretch? Why it is on the vertical stretch?
Ma'am, because in that range, both the countries are specializing in different commodities. So, like, home country will need the other one, and foreign country will need the other commodity. So,
Exactly. Look, this is only because of the assumption of Ricardo, first of all. The horizontal, that green relative demand curve is intersecting the vertical stretch of the relative supply curve because of the assumption of Ricardo. Ricardo assumes that after trade, both countries will go for complete specialization. That is why, just to satisfy that assumption, relative demand curve is intersecting relative supply curve at the vertical stretch. But if it will, for example, if I am drawing it, just a minute, if I will draw the relative demand curve through this point, okay, it's quite possible. If it is, then home country is at its incomplete specialization phase. Foreign country is specializing for wine production, no issue, but home country is producing both. So it's the incomplete specialization for the home country. Similarly, if I will draw the relative demand curve from here, then foreign country will go for incomplete specialization and home country will produce only cheese, that is complete specialization. But as Ricardo assumes that after trade, both country will produce either of these commodity, that means both country will go for complete specialization. That is why we are drawing relative demand curve through the vertical stretch of the relative supply curve. Is it okay?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, sometimes this type of questions may be asked by someone that why relative supply curve through vertical? Why not here? Why not here? So the reason is the assumption by Ricardo. In a nutshell, you can say it's the assumption of Ricardo. Ricardo assumes that at the time of trade, both countries will go for complete specialization. So that is why it is through the vertical stretch. Hmm. So tell me up to this point if you have any query. Otherwise, I will go for the gains from trade, or I can repeat what you want actually. And try to remember one thing. It is now I think you can understand that it is not like microeconomics. It's a type of microeconomics, but it is not microeconomics. We are using the concept of MPL, we are using the concept of APL, we are using the concept of demand and supply, but in different frame. So for that, we have to introduce a lot of new concepts. We have to know a lot of new things, and we have to discuss a bit difficult as before, as compared to the earlier one. But it's very interesting, that I can assure. Trade is very interesting and very scoring as well. Take your time, try to understand them. I think I should not continue with the next one, that is against from trade, because again you need some more, energy to understand it. It's better to understand up to relative supply curve. In the next class, I will start from the gains from trade. But please make yourself clear up to this slide. By the way, Ona Mitro, are you not getting the link of my class? You are not included in my class? Ona Mitro, are you here?
Ma'am, I am also not getting.
You are John.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You are in SEM 5, then why you are not getting? Just a minute, let me check it. Huh? Wait for a minute. Let me check. Because I have done it. Hmm. क्या लोगो? No, your names are not there. So I think Abhishek is also not here. What's your idea?
Yes, ma'am.
Abhishek is not here, but why? I talked with HOD and then I make this class. Okay. So let me talk with her again, huh? Ah, so if you have any query, you are free to ask. Actually, I thought before the class that I will complete this section actually, the gains from trade as well. But I don't think it will be very rational to finish it a single day. It will be a real pressure for you. What is your idea? Will I continue?
No, actually, it will
No, ma'am.
take time.
Okay.
That
So I will continue in the next class. Huh? I will continue with the gains from trade in my next class. I think that will be better. Take your time because everything, as I said, everything in your textbook. Just read your textbook, and I think you are getting access of LMS right now. So I will upload all those YouTube links also there. And if you need, you can. Okay, and before that I just want to tell you one thing. The previous classes is also in LMS. I have not deleted them. So if you want, you can take help of those classes, the last sem 5 classes, huh? So anyway, by today you will get the class link of last 3 classes, and make yourself clear about the topic, and don't try to just read and write blindly like this, okay? Because it's a theory, you have to understand it.
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, last class on Monday